And your name?
My name is Anita Walton Moore.
Okay. Where were you born?
I was born in Byhalia, Mississippi.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in several places. I went to elementary school in Alton, Illinois. I went to high school in Memphis, Tennessee. But my parents still lived in Mississippi, and I still visit with them during the summer months and when I was not in school.
So who did you stay with when you weren't with your parents?
Aunts. I stayed with my father's two sisters.
Did the schools that you went to, were they all black schools or?
They were all black schools.
Okay. What was it like going to an all black school?
Well, it was going with people I knew, people I could relate to. So I knew nothing else. I lived among black people. I worked among black people. I always was around black people. So this was all I knew.
What did your parents do for a living?
They were farmers.
Mm-hmm.
In Mississippi, they were cotton growers and corn growers and gardeners.
Okay. Did you have any siblings growing up?
I had an older sister. She was 8 years older than I, and but we were never close together because of the age difference.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys go to school together?
No, we didn't.
Okay. Where did you go to high school?
I went to high school at Douglas High School in Memphis, Tennessee, and I completed my high school degree at Mississippi Industrial College, my 12th grade year.
Okay. Can you describe some of your first experiences with racism?
My first experience with racism is hard to say when it started.
Well, in high school.
No.
You didn't have any there?
No, because we were not integrated.
Okay.
And so I guess I could say it started when I went off to graduate school.
Okay. So you didn't experience any racism when you went to college, when you went to not Russ, but Old Miss?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
Did you know anyone personally that had participated in Freedom Summer other than yourself?
Yes. There were family members and friends and co-workers. I can't think of any blacks who didn't participate in Freedom Summer that I knew.
So were most of the friends that you had involved in Freedom Summer?
Most of them were. Like I said again, everybody participated that I knew in some small or large way.
How did you get into college? Was there a scholarship involved, or?
Into college? No, there was no scholarship. Like I said, I finished high school in a college. I also took college courses during my high school year. That is why I went to MI, because I was able to take college courses. So I finished half of my freshman year of college when I graduated from high school. Mississippi Industrial College was an all-black college, so I had no racial issues there. But getting into Ole Miss was another thing. It was during the year, so after James Meredith went, so it was hard to get into into the University of Mississippi.
Who is James Meredith?
James Meredith was the first black to try to enroll at Ole Miss.
Okay. Did you feel like you had to adapt to the University of Mississippi community?
I did. I had a lot of getting used to the idea that I was now in a school with both blacks and white, and that was a difference. I could feel the difference, I could see the difference, and I experienced the difference.
Mm-hmm. So you were talking earlier about how you went to MI.
Mm-hmm.
So you went there before you went to...
Yeah, undergraduate.
Mm-hmm, undergraduate.
MI was my undergraduate.
And University of Mississippi was
a graduate.
You're a graduate. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did people treat you differently at University of Mississippi?
Not really. They were all very nice to me. I didn't... Well, I was not treated any differently than I was in undergraduate school. They were very nice and very accepting of me, but I truly believe that there was a difference in a grading system.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that the whites didn't have to do very much to get an A. And the blacks had to go overboard to get an A or a B in graduate school.
Did that seem unfair to you? Did that bother you?
It did. It bothered me to the point that I had to talk to my advisor about it.
Mm-hmm. Did you experience any racism with any of your teachers or advisors?
No, not any racism. They didn't show any racism to me or towards me, but I did hear of my black classmates saying that they were treated differently. I didn't see it, but evidently they felt that there was a difference in the handling of grades and the conversing and just answering questions in class. They said that was a difference. I didn't see it.
Now, was Freedom Summer happening while you were at Ole Miss, or did that happen after or before?
It happened before Ole Miss.
So, did you witness any protests or attacks?
I did. During Freedom Summer here in Holly Springs. Holly Springs was very involved in Freedom Summer. There were a lot of marches and protests and boycotts and what have you in Marshall County, period, and especially in Benton County. So we did. We experienced Freedom Summer. Russ College was the base for the Freedom Summer School, and my in-laws, who was very involved in Freedom Summer, lived with me to attend Freedom Summer School on Russ College campus.
How did you feel about the way people reacted to the protests, or the way the police reacted to the protests?
Very scared because they were using very harsh tactics like dogs and guns, and it was a scary situation during that time. And
did you ever witness any attacks where the dogs were?
No, I didn't witness. My husband, of course, and several other black men who were uptown one evening were shot at. But that was the biggie for me in Freedom Summer.
And how did you hear about these attacks? Did you hear them in the newspaper?
Well, they would be on TV, they'd be in the newspaper, and then if people were involved during the time who were friends of ours, we would hear through word of mouth.
Okay. Back to your time at Ole Miss, did you make any friends in college?
I did. I made several acquaintances. I wouldn't say we were friends, but we knew each other, and from time to time, I would go back to Ole Miss for work in the library, and I would see some of my white counterparts, and we were always on a friendly term.
Mhm.
And of course, I met a lot of black friends.
Did you continue the friendship out of college, or was that just it?
With one or two, I did. We still talk to each other and see each other on occasions, not often.
So during your time at Ole Miss, how did you stay in touch with your family and friends back home?
Well, I never left home.
Yeah.
I commuted every day to Ole Miss, and I was there for like 2 or 3, maybe, 2 or 3 summers, and I graduated with a library science degree. And I was the first black to graduate from Ole Miss in the library science department. And I think number 1 or 2 after James Meredith, the first or second after James Meredith, which made me about the 3rd to graduate from Ole Miss.
So you didn't experience multiple moments or any memorable moments of racism throughout your college experience, did you?
No, I didn't.
You didn't?
I really didn't.
During Freedom Summer, did you experience any?
Well, yes. The racism that was involved in Marshall County had to do with jobs. Jobs in the courthouse, jobs in the city clerk's office, just jobs in general around Holly Springs. There were no blacks in these particular areas, and that's what Freedom Summer was all about, getting jobs for black people in all of these buildings in Holly Springs, and jobs that where all whites were. They wanted a mix gender of people.
So, back to your time at Ole Miss, you say that the students, they didn't treat you very differently, did they?
Well, this is your first time asking about the students now. Students were kind of standoffish. Teachers, they played their part. They knew that to show a kind face and kind treatment. But students, they played their part, and some of them would say things, you know, and say words and things that I would not dare repeat on this interview here. But some of them were very harsh towards the blacks. And of course, now again, I didn't experience any of that either. But I do know some of my friends and some of the blacks did experience that.
Did you ever feel unsafe?
I really didn't. I really didn't.
Okay. So what did you do when you weren't in school after school?
I took care of 2 kids at home. That's one of the reasons I was not as involved with some of the marches during Freedom Summer, is because I had little kids. My kids were 4, 5, and 6. And that's what I did. At night I stayed at home with my kids. My husband was very involved, but I was not.
Did you find that difficult, going back and forth between school and then taking care of kids?
It was not difficult because I had a babysitter, and I had a good babysitter. So when you have someone at home you can trust with your kids, that makes a big difference.
So what did you do when you finished college?
When I finished college, I went directly to work in the public schools of Marshall County, and I stayed there 6 years in the public schools, and then I was hired at Russ College.
What did you teach in the public schools?
I taught English and mathematics for a couple of years, and then I was asked to be over the library. That's how I got into library science.
And the kids that you taught, were they, was it integrated, or were they only?
Oh, it was only black. And I've only been in a black situation in public school and in college. Russ is predominantly black. We do have a few white students and Asian students, but most of it is predominantly black.
Okay, did you ever, the kids that you taught at public school, around what age were they?
High school.
High school.
I
So
taught only high school students.
were they involved in Freedom Summer? No, this was afterwards. Never mind. So were you paid less because of your race?
Paid less because of what now?
Your race.
My race. Well, and not being in an integrated situation, I don't have anything to compare it with. I was just paid what the going fee was for teaching school in a public school, and the same at Rust.
So were all the teachers that taught alongside you, they were all black as well?
Yes, they were all black.
Okay. So, okay. Back to Freedom Summer. So this was about getting jobs, but
Jobs, and it started off with just getting jobs in better schools, just to improve the black population in every aspect of it. And it turned out that if you participated in that, a lot of people lost their jobs. So it turned out that we had to fight to get their jobs back. And one thing led to another situation. That's what it turned out to be.
okay. So wasn't Freedom Summer, or was it not like this in Holly Springs? Was it also about being able to vote?
Yeah, voter registration was a biggie for Freedom Summer.
So at the end of Freedom Summer, were you able to vote?
Well, mostly it was not until I get confused with dates, but I do know that we went up in 1964, when the Freedom Summer began, to register to vote, and we were denied. But I think a couple of years after that, the voter registration bill was passed and everybody was eligible to vote.
So when Freedom Summer ended, did you feel like it made a large impact on the...
That was a big difference. We had a lady in one of the districts to be supervisor, black lady, which was never heard of before. So it was little tidbits like that you could see a difference in the Freedom Summer movement. A lot of people got jobs. The banks hired black people. I think there were black people hired in the courthouse. So yes, you could see a big difference.
Did it affect you in any way?
Well, I got an Ole Miss. Even if I had to get recommendation letters from 3 white folk, they would not let you in unless some white person said that you were good enough to go. So
And was this for all colleges? You had to.
I do know it was for Ole Miss, and I'm sure it might have been for all of the white colleges and universities in Mississippi.
All right. So. That's that. Did you learn any life lessons through your experience in Freedom Summer? Did you learn anything that maybe sticks with you still to this day?
Well, I'm sure there was some learning lessons in all of this. But if you ask me to list one, I doubt if I could list one. I do know that you have to really press on for what you want and what you want out of life. You may have to work hard towards those goals. But I can't think of one thing that I could say that I have learned, especially that I didn't already know.
Did you learn anything from your experience at Ole Miss?
I did. I learned that a school is just a school, and you have to study no matter what school you go to. Set goals and etc.
Yeah. Did you ever encounter the KKK, or do you know anyone who has?
No. I didn't. I didn't have any crosses burned in my yard. I never met a white person who admitted that he or she was a member of the KKK. So
that's good.
That was something I had to read about or see it on TV or what have you.
Okay. Do you remember the incident with Emmett Till?
I do. I remember the time that we heard that he had been killed and why and so forth and so on.
How did you hear about it?
TV, I think.
How did it make you feel when you heard about it?
I just thought it was a terrible thing, a terrible tragedy, and so misfortunate.
Can you explain what it was about if you can still remember?
Well, the story goes that he was from Chicago, visiting in Mississippi, and he was a teenager, and he whistled at a white lady, and next thing we knew, he was pulled out of a river.
Okay. Was that a big part of the civil rights movement for you? Did you think that impacted the whole movement?
It was part of it. It was a lot of things that went on in the South. Right here in Marshall County, people were being drugged behind cars and trucks, laid on the railroad track. That had been going on for years before the movement ever started. It was just a build-up of bad incidents like that. And during the time of the movement, a young man in Byhalia was shot in the back by some policemen. So it was always a tragedy going on around you.
And were these crimes because of big reasons, like the one with Emmett Till where he whistled at a lady, or was it just because?
I don't know the reasons of any of these. It was just that it was like inward war against black and whites in Marshall County, that if you did anything to a white person, you just may you may end up dead. So I have no idea of why these things would happen, but I do know that they were happening.
Um, so when did you first hear about Martin Luther King Jr.?
Um, when Rosa Parks sat on the front of the bus,
Mm-hmm.
that's when he came to life. Um, a bunch of preachers met because she had been jailed, and they met to see what they could do about Rosa Parks and all
Mm-hmm.
the situations that were going on like that. And out of this meeting of ministers, Martin Luther King stood out, and I think they voted him to be the leader of that group,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest is history.
How did you feel about his character?
Well, all of us love Martin Luther King, and we still love Martin Luther King. So
Mm-hmm.
he was nonviolent, and that means a lot when you're doing a march. You have to
Mm-hmm.
think nonviolent.
Okay. Um. So, did you know about the Little Rock Nine? And
Yes,
how did you feel about them?
I thought they were brave, and that it was a good thing and a good way to start integrating schools.
Can you explain what they did?
Well, it was 9 who decided that they would integrate the white public schools of
Mhm.
Little Rock. And
And
they were escorted on by their parents and troops.
did you feel like when you went to Ole Miss that you were encouraged or escorted by anyone in particular?
At that particular time, it was 2 years after they had escorted James Meredith on,
Mm-hmm.
and everything was peaceful.
Okay.
That was all over and beyond.
So, did you feel as though you could relate to them, the Little Rock Nine?
Not really, because again, I was in graduate school and
Mhm.
they were
In high
high
school.
school.
Okay. Um. So, did you ever participate in any sit-ins? Or did you know anyone who participated in sit-ins, such as sitting at a lunch counter?
No, I do know that Russ College students at the time did go uptown to the drugstore and sit in there, but I
Mhm.
didn't participate.
How did you feel about that, the students?
I was happy to hear that somebody was taking a stance
Mm-hmm.
on some of the injustices that we were part of, and when you would hear something like that, you would be happy, and you would be happy that nothing really sad happened, that everything was carried out in a peaceful manner.
Mm-hmm. And I just forgot my question. Okay. So, but you didn't know these students who sat in personally?
No, they
Okay.
were students, and I was at that particular time a teacher.
So, whenever there were any protests or any like when people would stand up for what they thought was right, were you supportive of that?
Yes, a lot of the COFO workers and SNCC workers who came here to help organize Freedom Summer
Mm-hmm.
would often eat at my table,
Mm-hmm.
and they would visit in my home because, like I said at the beginning, there were several of my family members, my husband's sisters and cousins, who stayed with me and who worked very close with SNCC and COFO, and they would often invite them here to eat.
Mm-hmm. And were you happy about that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Um. Okay. How did the civil rights movement change after Martin Luther King gave his "I Have a Dream" speech?
I don't have any way of measuring how it changed, But each year, you could see a difference. You could
Mhm.
hear about something that had happened
Mhm.
that was in the movement that was better for black people, the betterment of black people.
Mhm.
Something happened every year thereafter that you would read about. You would see in a magazine that they had a black airline stewardess.
Mhm.
Somebody black had landed a job here, there, and everywhere.
Mhm.
You would just read about it, and you knew that, oh yeah, it's working.
And was this in just any newspaper, or was
Yeah,
there?
all over the United States. See,
Mhm.
this was not just in Mississippi.
Mhm.
Uh, People in the North didn't know that they had been deprived
Mhm.
until they heard about Mississippi. And they said to themselves, we should be fighting for this too. This is not happening in our town, in Los Angeles,
Mhm.
Chicago, New York.
Mhm.
They had to fight too. They had marches and things there for that betterment.
So, had you heard about Malcolm X at this time?
Oh yeah, I've heard about. At my age,
Mhm.
you have heard about all of that. Yeah.
So, how did you feel about Malcolm X when he was shot?
Well, you never want to hear of anybody being shot
Mhm.
of any race. You just don't want to hear that. He was a strong, outspoken man,
Mhm.
and
What
not
did
surprised, but you know you don't want to hear about it.
What did he encourage? Was he Martin Luther King was about peace, but
Well, he was more radical.
mhm.
I don't know his platform, but
Mhm.
I do know he was more radical and of a different religion.
Mhm.
He was very, very respected with his people.
And do you think that he had a big role in the civil rights movement?
I think he had a role
Mhm.
in there, but it somehow to me it was a one-sided role. Mostly religion
Mhm.
had to do with it, and
In what way? What was he enforcing? Really?
Muslims.
Uh-huh.
And Muslims, they just don't participate
Mhm.
like most people do.
Mhm.
We don't care what religion you are. You can be Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian, Catholic, whatever. All religions to us are just as important. But somehow Muslim thinks that the Muslim way is the right way.
Mhm. And that's what he
Yeah.
was enforcing. Okay. Well, how did you feel when Martin Luther King was shot?
Oh, we were devastated
Mhm.
about that. Just, to some point we didn't know where we were going to turn to and who our next leader would be.
Do you feel like that impacted the entire black population as a whole?
Yes, and not only the black but white population too, who were working toward the same goal.
Mhm. Okay. And do you remember the Mississippi burning case?
Mississippi burning. That is not anything that I could really talk about, but yes, I remember.
What do you remember about it?
Not very much.
Okay. Alright. And that's all. Alright. What do you do now?
I am the library director at Russ College here in Holly Springs. I have been there for, I think, 44 years. And I have promised that I would stay there 2 more years until Russ celebrate its 150th year, I think. Yeah, in 2016, and I'm going to give it up.
Are you proud of the work that you've done there?
I am very proud of the work that I have done there.
How has it been watching the whole civil rights movement progress until now, where it's hardly really that large anymore?
We have made a lot of differences with the civil rights movement that I know that wouldn't have never happened without the civil rights movement. But we still are not in the mainstream of life, and we still have a long ways to go.
Okay.